topic because it's trending. And I started to make a longer live today because of the flack in the comments that I was getting in my comment section as it relates to Kingvon. You know what I mean? I was hearing all kind of stuff they were saying in there. You know what I mean? Defending. Hold on a minute. Defending what I felt as it related to these people outside of our culture making all this money off black trauma. And what I was surprised about is how many black people defended the documentary, defended, the exploitation of black trauma. So I decided to go live again, open the comments. You know what I mean? Open the comments, and we can address the situation and talk about it, because we need to have discussions as black people. Now, when you come in, like, share, and subscribe to the video. The first person I want to deal with is No Jumper.
And just like how ruthless Vaughn's tweets were and shit, like, I can't believe that I sat across from this dude and talked to him and didn't have any clue about the fact that he had this much shit. Which, realistically, at that time, people from Chicago and shit, they did know. But it was just kind of in the dark. I thought it was just like a dope rapper signed to dirt. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When I was watching it, I started to just feel kind of like sick to my stomach. Just how bad it was. Like, just how much.
And this is No Jumper. No Jumper is just like academics. He built his whole platform on interviewing drill rappers, which in turn financed them to continue to fight because it gave them the money and the resources, and it provided the reasons for more violence. But you don't see any black man promoting other nationalities' destruction with their youth for profit. And the reason that it's deep is because Kingvon has a large following, and the puppet master knows that putting that serial title on him, the people that admire him, the young people that's still developing, will look at that as a standard to live up to. So when you hear people like No Jumper and Trap Lord, they started off praising Von, interviewing Von, smiling and laughing with him. But after his demise, they tapped out on all they can get as far as content with that. So now the new content is the fact that he's no longer here. So the narrative now is to throw the serial title on him, put pictures next to Jeffrey Donberg in there, you know what I mean, to really create a narrative. Because it trips me out that No Jumper is going to say he was sickened and he was one of the main ones interviewing him.
Going back and forth, one person dies on the other side, shit happens right away. And just like how ruthless Vaughn's tweets were and shit, like, I can't believe that I sat across from this dude and talked to him and didn't have any clue about the fact that he had this much shit. Which, realistically, at that time, people from Chicago and shit, they did know. And I was just kind of in the dark. I thought it was just like a dope rapper signed to dirt. Yeah, I'm up.
Okay, now we know that's a lie. We know that No Jumper knew exactly who Von was to Chicago and in Chicago. So then, this is the guy
white wine. One would claim to be finding a lot of things
that makes the video.
into a demon.
Look how he's talking about the brother.
King Von, real name Davon Bennett, was born on August the 9th, 1994, in Chicago, Illinois. Growing up on West 78th and South Hermitage, in an area known as Killer Ward, an area mainly affiliated with the Chicago gangs, the Gangster Disciples, and the Black Pea Stones. Von would attend Barton Elementary School in the area, but despite starting life as a fairly normal kid in Chicago...
Now, mind you, this guy's from the UK, and he's all wrapped up in Chicago gangland politics from his perspective. From his perspective, it's a good story, no matter how much trauma it brings to the family of mothers like FBG Duck, Tuka's mama, you know what I mean, and all the rest of the mothers in Chicago. I had a young guy get on here to tell me, you know what I'm saying, that I'm old and I don't know what's going on, as if I'm not from Detroit, and as if I had never lived that life. I've lived that life. I've lived that beef, that worn life. I've suffered and lost friends because of that life. But now I'm almost 60, and my children are King Von's age. My grandchildren loved King Von's music and loved King Von. So when I speak to it, I'm not speaking to it from no young perspective. I'm speaking to it from a perspective of a guy who's actually lived that gang life, lived that street life in Detroit, went to Jackson, MR, and everywhere else you could be based on that, from not just busting in the street, but to actually using the shanks. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to glorify it, but you can't sit back and let them demonize these mothers' deceased sons. What does it do for the culture? What does a documentary saying that King Von was serial like Dahmer and Bundy, as much as he's loved by the youth of the young people? It's always the same. It's other races and nationalities of people making money off black people's trauma or black people's oppression. And you can go and you can argue with me and say, well, we doing it to each other, whatever, but you gotta go to the root of it. And if you still a black man and you still will ride against black people to defend other nationalities' right to exploit us, you got a problem. You know what I mean? You that one, you that Tom, you that one that would have told on Harriet Tubman. You that one would have actually told on Harriet Tubman. You the type of person you would have told on Jesus. You'd have told on Jesus. If you sit back and you don't see how vile this is to say this about this brother after he's gone.
He would be subjected to the influence of gangbanging in his family home from a young age. His father was Walter E. Bennett, aka Silk, a well-known street dude from nearby Ada Park. Von was mainly raised by his mother, as his father was in and out of jail throughout his childhood. But Von's father was apparently a legend in the streets, with ties to the street gang, the Black Disciples. However, much like Von, despite the fierce...
Let me stop and say this because I know that the enemy ain't gonna like my take on this. But this is for commentary, fair usage, and educational purposes. And you see that they said that Von was born into this. His daddy was a BD. You know, I know a lot of older guys in my age group whose sons these are, who are BDs and GDs. And I used to ask them when they would be in Detroit, like, ain't both you guys from Chicago, how come y'all don't deal with each other? They would say, well, you know, they GDs, we BDs. You know, I'm from Detroit, I'm like, what's the difference? You know what I mean? And you get to see the evolution of this beef since Hoover, Jeff Ford. These young men were born into these situations. They inherited beef from their uncles, their fathers, their brothers. When you really know the story, you will see that these weren't people who were just out doing things random. These were young men who were born in poverty, pain, and trauma. How do you expect them to behave when they see their uncles, father, friends all being deleted by the ops? You think they're gonna have love for the ops? See, what this guy is doing, he's analyzing it from a European perspective, and he's sensationalizing it because with the title, Kingvon, the first serial rapper. Really? Let's listen to some more. Fair usage.
Some reputation he'd earned in the streets, it would ultimately be this proximity to gang life that would lead to his father's demise, as Kingvon's dad Silk was shot dead when Von was only 11 years old, apparently being targeted by a sniper outside of a skating rink, according to an interview with Kingvon's uncle.
Rest in peace, Kingvon. Rest in peace, Silk. That's crazy. Like, I'm with me, bro, every day, man. Killer daddy was sniping, like, this get deep, though, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, sniper. And it was a sniper rifle. Yeah, that's but you know, that's another story.
It seems clear that Kingvon's father Silk was remembered as a legend of the block. However, coping with the loss of his father at such a young age clearly had a negative effect on the mindset of a young Kingvon. He would tweet and rap in freestyles years later that he simply couldn't sleep after his father's death.
They killed my daddy, I couldn't even go to sleep.
And throughout his teenage years, he would post RIP tributes to his father on Twitter to commemorate his birthdays. Naturally, Von would follow in his father's footsteps, getting involved in local gang politics at a young age, with Von actually telling 16-shot visuals in his very first interview that he got involved in the streets in 4th grade, eventually getting his hands on guns by the time he got to high school.
You was like total pikes in 4th grade, like when you started.
I beat it, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't that heck, like, it ain't good. I just been, you know, in the streets with also, I was like being outside, you know, one of the little boys that like sleeping up, just being outside all day, just doing best. Man, the gun, all that stuff, that kind of played to like what? Yeah, like late 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade when it really got to that point where you gotta hurt somebody or somebody trying to hurt you and you gotta protect yourself.
Von would rap on the unreleased song Wait that he jumped off the porch, getting deeply involved in gang politics in 2006 when he was just 12 years old. Von would initially be a member of a local street crew affiliated.
Okay, so we're gonna stop there. He entered gang life from a child, following his father, his uncles, and his friends' footsteps. See, there's a bigger problem than just drill rap. The bigger problem is the people who are pulling the strings and creating an environment of danger. You guys didn't see on the YouTube when they found out that somebody had dropped military grade weapons in Chicago and just left them in the alley in their neighborhood? Military grade weapons? Think about it. Think about this story this guy's really telling. How he's using all these pictures. I'm trying to find you the picture of all the people they try to attribute to Von. And everybody knows it's cap. Everybody knows it's cap. The documentary is already made, and it is interesting. But what's the deep part about it is to see this guy get all this money or all this black trauma while these guys' mothers are still grieving. The mothers are still grieving. FBG Duck mother is always grieving. Kingvon mama is grieving. Their families is grieving. But yet, for some reason, these Caucasians know more about black culture than we do. They tell our story better than we do their thing. Remember, this is his story. It's his story.
Just kept getting away with it. Once the hip-hop world saw King Von next to Lil Durk in the courtroom in shackles, he quickly gained a reputation as one of the realest street rappers in the rap game. For some people, seeing Von in court with Durk, one of the most famous rappers in Chicago history, was their first introduction to him. However, for anybody that looked closer into his history, discovering the murder case that he
Here we
beat,
go.
or
This is what I want you guys to see.
people he was rumored to have killed, they would be equal.
This is what I want you guys to see.
Why I ain't never do this more? Why I ain't never do this with my kids more? Why I ain't do this with my pops more, my mom? You know what I'm saying? So it just set me down so I just understand life.
A member of his legal team says slightly more than 2 months after he surrendered to be booked into the Fulton County Jail, Lil Durk, a.k.a. Dirk Banks, did a book bag giveaway Sunday in conjunction with the Atlanta Entertainment Basketball League, where kids can watch NBA players and others for free. Because it was the right thing to do, though she knows there will be critics.
It ain't nothing new pop up for the case. We've been doing it.
But he did not do it because of the serious charges he faces after a February incident on North Avenue in which a man was wounded by gunfire, including criminal attempt to commit murder.
We'll fight our case in court.
And a gang charge.
Lil Durk validated himself as having a gang affiliation, right?
Allegedly, right.
Among others.
Being from South Side of Chicago. Essentially, you have...
Von and Durk released their latest collab track, Like That. And despite their legal troubles, Von was still dropping lyrics hinting towards having killed K.I. and dissing Tuka. It's actually crazy to me that even whilst facing serious charges of attempted murder, both King Von and Lil Durk would continue to rap about such true criminality. Lil Durk's experiment in taking the realist gangbanger from his block and turning him into a drill rapper was going too far and jeopardizing his own career. It was only years later, after Von's death, that those charges against Lil Durk for the varsity shooting were eventually dropped, with the district attorney saying that if King Von was still alive, he likely would have still been charged and facing trial for attempted murder. But in the end, whilst he was alive, King Von would face no real consequences for his involvement in this supposed shooting. In fact, Von would bail out from these charges and continue his career, not even choosing to keep a low profile either. In fact, even with the scrutiny of the police in 2 states, Von would go on to have one of the most successful runs in the rap game, dropping song after song of violent drill anthems, with the entire world following along and wondering how this multiple murderer just kept getting away with it. Once the hip-hop world saw King Von next to Lil Durk in the courtroom in shackles, he quickly gained a reputation as one of the realest street rappers in the rap game. For some people, seeing Von in court with Durk, one of the most famous rappers in Chicago history, was their first introduction to him. However, for anybody that looked closer into his history, discovering the murder case that he...
Now, this is what I wanted you guys to see. Look at all these young black people that they're accusing Von of deleting. Clearly, he didn't delete all these people. That's cap. That's cap. Everybody knows that. That's cap. If you know, you know. But look at them. Every one of them has a mother and a family that's still grieving. He got the dates. He got everything just lined up, telling the real story. Profiting off the pain and misery of people that live in the ghetto and people that's oppressed. I'm not saying it would be good if it was a black person making this story. But if it was a black person actually making this story, they would have told the truth. The truth is, these guys is not monsters. They was born into the culture. Their daddies was BDs and GDs. It goes back decades before they were even thought of. Could you imagine being born in a war? Because that's what it really is. So I went live because I got a lot of flack from, I don't know if they was trolled, but I couldn't believe that another black person wouldn't see that this was clearly a money grab to make a profit off the exploitation of black trauma. Every one of these young black people on this computer screen has family that's still grieving them. Now, this sensationalized video, now in the name, just by using Von's name and that serial title was so provocative, and he put all the clips together that he got from people from Chicago and everywhere else to make his story. And he got rich, just like they always do, since we've been in this country. Since we've been in this country, they have always profited from the exploitation and the suffering of black people. That is really the legacy rooted in black culture. I'm not going to play the whole thing. You guys can go look at it. You know what I mean? It's interesting because I think if you really look at it, you'll see where I'm coming from when you see him saying and tying all these things together that is impossible to be true. But it makes for a good story. No matter who it hurts, and no matter how much it keeps the gang violence going, and they still hating each other. And nobody's learning, and nobody's winning. We're all losing. But the first step is, when we gonna stop letting them tell our stories? Peace. Sign out Detroit.